Okay, we are now recording, so over to you, Sylvia.
Okay, great, thank you. So it'll be a brief presentation about top tips. That's the agenda. So we're going to cover what are the top tips writing an effective resume and CV. What are the top tips to have the best LinkedIn? I think quite a lot of questions came around. Why? How can recruiters find me? How can I get a job offer through LinkedIn? Because we're going through the pandemic and COVID-19, our lives has changed. So quite a few of us are attending phone and video interviews. So when we talk about hire and manage a top tips, actually these both go hand in hand. How to be different, how to prepare differently for a phone video interview versus the face-to-face interview. And then we'll go into the Q&A session. Okay. When it comes to writing an effective resume and CV, these are the top tips primarily looking into 2020 current trends. So if you've lost your job and you may have been made redundant, so resume is a very important, well-crafted resume shows employers that you are in the right mindset to get back to work. So I think a lot of since I joined this group, I've been helping a lot of people to help them with their resumes. And the common mistake people don't know, they've got a lot of information and they don't know where and what to do. So first and foremost, I would advise to compile a complete CV. Put everything you've got in one document, your skills, your training, volunteering, freelance, call it a historical CVs, have it there. So from there on, then you start creating an application-specific CV. So which CV needs to be short and relevant. So what I've done, I've put together a kind of, I'll move into the next slide and I'll come back to this slide. I've put together a kind of structure. Once you've created your CV and a historical resume, then how you can make sure that your CV actually tailored to the job. So in terms of the templates for form, please by all means don't think that this is the ideal format that you should use, but definitely one as a guide. What are the key things you should cover in your CV? So summary of your qualification, and some people call it profile or whatever, it needs to be the first thing in your CV after your name and obviously your link, your email and phone number. And if you've got the LinkedIn URL, you can put it there as well. The summary should have really, really small, short and brief 4 to 5 bullet points that highlights the most relevant skills for the job you're applying for. You must have the job description in front of you, find the keywords and use them. And to make the most of this section, I think I've put as guide the following. You should cover who are you, what can you offer to the company, and what are your career goals. So you need to, this is the section of your CV that you would be updating regularly every time you apply for the job. And that will give you to stand out for the employers quickly. Then you move into your work history, professional experience. Again, your job title, company. You must put the year. Some people, I've seen CVs that people used to put the addresses, so it's not relevant, especially if you are applying within the country. Just city is enough. But if you are traveling internationally, city in the country would be the best. So here you put paid, unpaid, part-time, freelance, volunteering, internship. Depends on what you got. If you've got, most of the time, if you're a very senior executive, you probably want to minimize and leave it up to this. Depends on the employer, obviously, but some best practice suggests that 10 employments and the rest you can combine in the summary at the end. And then you move on to your education. Again, make sure that you put your degrees, the chronological order. By the way, I missed about, so I'm not sure many of you probably don't do this, but trust me, I've seen many CVs, especially for the executives, who put the chronological order wrong. They put the first job at the top and then they move way up. Please do not do that. It's very frustrating. Always start with the latest job that you've been, you are at. So use the recent job. And so the same for your education, and then use the professional associations. I put skills at the end. If you believe that your skills are the core for the role, please by all means move the skills in front of the education, or even before you talk about your professional experience. Skills and the summary of qualification, the two areas that you have to adjust and tailor to the job that you're applying for. So that's a a overview of the job description. Again, the templates, you can use different templates, but please don't use funky templates where there are quite a lot of spacing taken. I'll go back to my slide where there's some top tips to remember when you're crafting your CV. Remember to tailor your CV, or we call it personal profile and skills section, to every job you're applying for. Aim to keep your summary short and sweet and no longer than a few sentences. So another common mistake people do, use past tense for the jobs you did in the past. I delivered, accomplished, or whatever you've done. And then present tense in your current job. Some people, you copy and paste job description for their current job description. What are the requirements in what their job was in the past? But what have you done? That's what they want, not the copy and paste of the job description. Take keywords from the job description that most employers are looking for. So if you've got a job, project manager job, what are the top key things that they're looking for? Use those that are relevant to what you've done. The standard length in the CV in the UK is 2 pages. So try to stick to 2 pages. In many countries, it's common practice to include a photo. I've seen many CVs with photo. It's not, UK is not one of them. So do not put a photo in your CV, but by all means, we'll go into LinkedIn where you can put a photo of yourself. Do not include your age, date of birth, and marital status in your CV. It's illegal even if the employer asks you, so it's important for you to know your rights. And remove all irrelevant, outdated experience. And if you're already senior executive, you probably don't want to show that you know Microsoft, you know how to use PowerPoint and Excel. So maximize the space you have and put relevant experience. So they're the top tips that I think that you need to bear in mind when you're writing your CV.
Okay, Sylvia, if I could just stop you there then. So before you move on to the next slide. So that was great, lots and lots of tips for people. And it's generated 2 questions. So I'll pose the first one to you from James. So James has asked, is education, so I guess you know the education section, relevant if you are an older candidate, say you're over 40, is your education section relevant?
I'll cover that, but probably one of the mentors would also like to chime in. Absolutely, education is relevant. Look at the job description. If that's what requirement in the job description. For example, I used to work for Saudi Aramco for the last 6 years before I used to Anglo American. So we hire people over 50, okay? Really senior executives we bring to organization. In Saudi, you cannot go to any job if you're an engineer unless you've got 4 years particular engineering, because sometimes it's tech, B-Tech, it doesn't work. It needs to be 4 years. So put your years of the graduation, clarify, because it depends on the role and the company and the country you're applying for. And as I said, unless you have the formal education, you won't be able to relocate to most of the UAE countries, for example. And so it's others. However, some roles do not require a degree. Is not it's not a must. So it depends on the role.
Okay, so Sylvia, I'll just jump in because James has asked kind of a subsequent question, which I'll raise and I'll just mention. So he's essentially saying, but you know, if you don't have a degree, do you still put it in? So what I would say is exactly what you touched on, Sylvia. If the job's requiring some particular educational, qualificational type stuff, you should put it in. But if for argument's sake, the only qualifications you have are what you did when you were 16 years old, 18 years old, and they have no relevance to the job whatsoever, and then I think, you know, many people would agree, you might not necessarily need to put in that you've got GCSEs if they have no relevance to the role whatsoever.
Let me just add, another context. So obviously Sylvia and Alan, absolutely fantastic, perfectly spot on, you're relevant. But the other thing is education comes in more than one guise. It's not just these days, have you got a degree? So for example, if you're working in a certain field, you might have professional qualifications, but you didn't get a degree. So in that instance there, what you're showing to the hiring manager is, okay, so maybe I didn't get a degree and maybe I left with O levels or CSEs, but you know what? I've invested in myself. I've invested and I've done other courses and I've wanted to bring myself back up. So that's something that they will take on board, but it doesn't negate what Sylvia said about core and obviously where a role is saying you must have a 2-1 from a red brick establishment. But if you've got other types of qualifications and they are pertinent, I would still put them in, because it does demonstrate that you're investing in yourself, which means that you could then potentially be seen as a candidate. Oh, okay, they haven't got the prerequisites, but look what they've done over and above. So that's something to perhaps consider.
Yeah. And one more
Absolutely.
question. So go on, Sylvia.
Professional association, absolutely, you're right, Gary. It needs to be included.
So Sylvia, I have one more question for you, which someone messaged me privately in the chat. So they said, look, I've not worked for the last 2 years. What's the best way to describe this gap in the CV without, giving negative connotations? So I won't be mentioning the names or anything, but, so if the person has a gap in their CV for whatever reason, okay, so whether they're unemployed or whatever, whatever the reason is, how do they address that so that it doesn't look, look bad?
I think being honest in your CV is absolutely important. The hiring manager wants to know what you've been up to. Obviously, you have reasons why you've been having this gap. So it might be that you wanted to take career break. It might be that you were doing some training and education. You were involved in the building your house and or family support. It could be elderly support. So be honest in your CV and don't have any career gaps. That's actually so important. And make sure that your CV is aligned with what you're saying on LinkedIn as well, because they're going to check both. We'll talk about it when we go to LinkedIn. But I think being honest and showcasing any volunteering you're doing, any other support you're providing to your friends and family, just put that in there in your CV. Maybe you guys have anything to add, Gary, Mark?
No, I think I just, again, reiterate what you've said is your CV is an initial window to you. And if there's a gap, there's a gap. So as you say, if you've been doing stuff which isn't necessarily, let's say, career related, but you've been doing something, it is valuable. I appreciate people don't want to put their whole life on a CV. So as you say, you could just put some lines around the fact that you were doing something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd add there are certain roles where not including something is actually going to cause you a problem. And I've worked for security cleared roles, and should you not have added something either on the CV or a vetting that comes up subsequently, then that doesn't go well. It could actually stop you getting the job. So I absolutely would encourage you, if there's a gap, there's a gap. If somebody wants to ask a question, they will ask you the question at interview, but there are certain roles where you'd absolutely be encouraged just to be clear on the roles you've done, where you've had gaps and so on.
Absolutely. Again, going back to the Saudi company I worked, everyone had to go through the background screening, and we had a lot of candidates have to be declined because they've lied on their CV and they were covering the gaps. It will come up. So being honest is important. Hope that answers the question.
So Sylvia, there are more questions flying in, which is great. So, that's encouraging. So what I'll do though is I will let you go through your next slide or two before I post some of those questions. So just to keep the flow going, okay? So, because it may be that some of the content that you cover in your presentation addresses the questions anyway. Okay, so over to you.
Okay, great, thank you. So we talk about some of the best practices for LinkedIn profiles. So I think as a message, I want to take away from it, although I will go through some of the key things. There are multiple things you can do, but one thing I need to remember, and I put it at the top, treat your LinkedIn profile as a living asset. What I mean by that, make sure that you constantly update any new accomplishment, any new successful project you delivered, any new training or award. Make sure you constantly update and tell the story there. So it's your asset, it's you, and represents you in the market. So make sure that you are aware of that. So one of the key common mistakes people do, I've put there as optimize your headshot on your LinkedIn profile. So I've seen multiple different, even from recruiters themselves, you see multiple different pictures that people put, but please make sure that you've got a nice, good picture of your headshot and smiling just shows the engaging person. If someone looks at your CV, they want to work with you, they want to hire you. That's what the hiring manager is looking for. And you don't have to go and invest in a professional photo, but if you've got a chance and opportunity, add a professional photo would look nice. So the other thing which not many people know, customize your URL to stand apart and appear unique. So URL is at the top when you copy and paste someone's link to someone's LinkedIn. And it can be so long with multiple different digits and numbers and characters. So you can use the chance to use your own. If you're running your own company, for example, best practice consulting, use that. The only, and I would advise you to do ASAP, because you only get one chance at it. If there are many Sylvia Phillips, if someone used Sylvia Phillips, I may add my initials in the middle, or initial at the end. Try different options, because if it's taken, it's taken. But it's the URL is used quite a lot internally when the hiring managers share different links and saying, hey, here's the link to the LinkedIn, and here's the attached CV. And it's important how you present yourself. So after the headshot, I would say the most important thing is your headline in LinkedIn. You are allowed to use 120 characters. You have to describe this, your work, and use this wisely. So you could look into keywords, and I've said that keywords when I was using it, when we're talking about the CVs. Keywords is quite important, because whatever, you have to have a job description, understand what is it, the type of job you're applying for, what are the keywords there. When a recruiter searches for the role, what are they going to look for? So if you're into web design, put it up in a headline. Make sure that then you tell the story in your summary, and you tell the story in your work history. So the more you put those keywords there, the more you're searchable and you'll come up. Ensure it fully represents you and your work, and then the common problems your prospects would face. So the next section would be your summary. It's also, you could use the keywords from your LinkedIn headline. That what you said in your LinkedIn headline, I'm a web designer. Make sure you put it there, and include why you do that, why you do what you do, and you should answer, so what? I brought an example here for you. Instead of saying I'm a consultant, what are the ways you can say to the people that you're a consultant? I brought an example. I help clients eliminate speed bumps in the workflows and optimize their proficiency. This is just an example, right? There's a lot of different things you do. As a project manager, what is it that you want people to know about you as a project manager? And so some of the time, what recruiters are looking for as a top tip. So if you are a project manager, they're looking for understanding how many projects you worked on, what was the scope of the project you worked on, how big was the team you were managing, and size and scale and your involvement in that project is important. So put it out there. Consider yourself introducing yourself with a short video. I know a lot of people don't do it, but there is a capability in LinkedIn to do that. Explain who you serve, problems you solve, and how to contact you. Have a really good title, description with keywords describes the video. So especially, as I said, with all the pandemic and us working in the lockdown and us working from home, the video will immediately can be immediately shared with the hiring manager and explain, and they can understand whether you're the right for the culture or not. And most of the time, it really shortens the process. And then we move on into work history and education. Include your training, education, work history to demonstrate the longevity, experience, reliability, and everything that contributed to your success. So again, whatever you use in your headline, whatever you use in your summary, make sure you tell the same story in your work history. The other key thing, make sure there is no gap between your resume and LinkedIn. That's important. If you put in your resume something, make sure it's also in your LinkedIn. Remember, the work history, the education part isn't the part you're going to tailor in your CV, so it can always stay the same. The other thing I would like to tell you about work history, a lot of people spend time writing about company. Okay, I work for Microsoft, and Microsoft does this. They have 20 locations, blah, blah, blah. If you put the logo for your work history, and so you say work Microsoft and the logo, just eliminate, so utilize the space they've given you for telling what you've done in Microsoft, what achievements you've had, rather than talking about Microsoft. If you put their logo, the recruiter can then click. If they've got the company they don't know of, Microsoft probably not the best solution, the best example. They can actually see what the company is into and what they're doing. So try to utilize that as well. And recommendations are quite important. If you are so good that you're saying you're good, they would want to validate it with recommendation. If you don't have any, please don't be shy. Ask your client or a colleague, of past customers, just ask them, and you'd be surprised how many responses you get. And people are always happy to help each other. And I would also advise you to post all your certifications. It positions you as a trusted resource. So I know I've talked too much. I want to stop there.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you, Sylvia. I thought my LinkedIn profile was awesome, superb, etc. But there's definitely a few points from there that I can take as well and improve. So thank you for that. So look, there's a couple of questions. So before you move on to the next slide, let me pose them to you. So just going up from earlier on. So a question was, let me just find it. Okay, so a question was, what should be the content in experience when the job description is too generic and mostly supporting role only? So I guess, just to paraphrase, so if the job description is generic, and then what should you have in your content when you're applying for that job? You know, how do you relate your CV to that role, I think is the question. Sylvia, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll just give it briefly. So if that particular job is very generic, doesn't clarify, but surely you know what that job does. There's quite common, a lot of the time, hiring managers or the internal HR teams don't put the right job description. The job description don't tell the true story. So perhaps Mark as a hiring manager can say on that as well. But I'd say if I'm a project manager and applying for project management role, I know what project management role, a good project management role look like. So find a good relevant job description that would describe that job and utilize that those keywords, I would say.
Okay, let me, rather than bringing any of the other mentors in, let me just go to the next question, because there's a few questions being sent now, many of them to me privately as well as some in the public area. So another question is, and I think this is quite interesting, in terms of certifications or courses from these platforms such as Udemy, Coursera, etc. So these are obviously maybe not accredited courses, but you know, they're on these platforms that anyone could access, maybe YouTube, etc., LinkedIn Learning. How relevant do you think those courses are on your CV and LinkedIn profile? Because in theory, people could be putting 4, 5, 6 different courses that they do. Perhaps they've got for free, or they've paid a little amount of money. How valuable do you think those courses are? And again, Sylvia, if I can ask you first, but I'll probably bring in Mark and Gary as well after.
I think quite a lot of people offer free courses, and it's by all means go attend hundreds of them and all of them. But I think, and if you don't, and a lot of people, I see some of my colleagues putting, and then they're adding into LinkedIn, but I can see that they don't have any other trainings that they've added there. So if it's relevant to the job that you're going to apply. However, I'm a project manager, but I want to know about a psychology. I don't know, you might be wanting to know about a different subject. So it's up to you. If you've got the relevant skills for project management roles you're applying for, I would say putting psychology degree might help somehow, might not help, but it really, you need to make sure that it's relevant. You don't put irrelevant things to confuse the recruiter.
Okay, so I guess, like I said, I'll come on to Mark and Gary, but I guess so the course could have value if you can show, that doesn't matter if it's a free course or whatever, the fact that you've taken effort to do it, but it's specific to the role, that application you're making could be good, right? So Mark, do you have anything else to add on to that?
I think it's part of your story. And one of the organizations I worked for didn't do a criteria-based interview. What they did was a historic top grading interview that effectively started from school and went through every role you'd got and understood why you made the decision you made and so on. And certainly I went through that, and I was interviewing a number of people through that. And one of the things I did was, when I was made redundant from a role, I invested in my own ITIL manager training, got the certification, and was able to demonstrate, rather than just sitting there and doing nothing for a few months. I actually, invested in my own career and moved on. And that's where I think you could turn these things to a real advantage if you can explain why you did that training and how it's added to your overall development and career.
Okay, thanks. And Gary, do you want to add anything else? Gary, you're on mute, by the way. Unmute yourself if you need, Gary.
Right, yeah. So just to add on to what both Mark and said, it is about your self-development. And as Mark said, LinkedIn is part of your brand. You are a brand candidate. And if you're showing that you've obviously got experience and you've done the courses, that's fine. But part and parcel of it is educating with the recruiters. So from a project management perspective, the recruiters know about APM, they know about PMI, they know about Prince 2. That's fair enough. And the thing is to bear in mind is, if you're putting your qualifications or your experience on there, and they're not from an accredited body, then they may not necessarily hold as much weight as those that have come from an accredited body, such as the APM or PMI. So you've got to consider and weigh up the value to you as a candidate, to your brand, when you're going to go forward for something. So if you've done something like the DEMI or something like that that's not accredited, is it going to add value, or is it going to add any more confusion? So really, it's down to you to consider the value add that it will provide you.
Okay, thank you. So let me move us on. So,
I just want to add, so yes, if a role requires, if a recruiter been told from the hiring manager, I want a candidate who's got CFA certification or accreditation, make sure you add that. But anything else you add, you've done on Udemy, which is free and which tells your brand and your story, it will be relevant, not initially when they identify you, but potentially later on when they're checking your profile, you're coming for interview, they want to know more about you.
Okay, thank you. So let me move us on because quite a few questions actually they're popping in now. So can we use multiple keywords if the work experience helps you to apply for multiple jobs? So, use product manager, business analyst, solutions, architect. So I'm guessing what they mean by this, again, if I paraphrase, is maybe in the role. So say, for example, I'm a project manager, as an example. In my role, can I use project manager, stroke, business analyst, stroke, program manager, if it helps? So multiple keywords applying for multiple roles. How do you address role versus job title? I'm not sure if that's exactly what this person meant, but how do you address the role someone was doing versus job title they have, and how they can essentially show that they have multiple skills? So Sylvia?
Okay, I think it might be a relevant question for Gary because he's in project management, Gary, and you're freelance.
Apologies, I had to step out to deal with something. Can you just repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. But the question anyway wasn't specific around project management. So I know, Sylvia, you mentioned Gary, but I think rather than me going over the question, if Mark wants to pick it up, or Sylvia, if you want to address it. So it's essentially about using multiple roles, multiple keywords, rather than maybe your specific job title when you're applying for multiple roles. How do you address that?
Yeah, I can take that. I put an answer in the chat, but I'll replay it for here. I think it all depends on where you're putting it. If I was applying for a job that said, we need a program manager, I'm not going to say, oh, and by the way, I can do service strategy and I can do a service improvement program and so on, because that's not relevant to the role. So I would absolutely echo Sylvia's recommendation from earlier to say tailor things to the role you're applying to and the organization you're applying to. But of course, there are places where you post your CV on a job board or you post your LinkedIn profile, which is effectively a very visible form of your CV, where you do need to cater for the fact that people may contact you with different roles that you have the skills for. And that's where I think using those keywords wisely is the right approach.
Okay, so 2 more questions I'll pose before I get you to move on again, Sylvia, and then we'll pick up more questions afterwards. So this one is, in your LinkedIn, should you have your historic CV there, if you like? So should you have everything in your LinkedIn profile versus, what you were saying about your historical everything CV that you didn't zone in on 2 pages? So how lengthy should your LinkedIn profile be?
Yeah, it is creating confusion for people that want to have everything there. You have to have the chronological order of the work history you've done from the work experience perspective. So you have to have and make sure there is no gap. Your LinkedIn can be generic, can cover multiple skills. It's your CV that needs to be tailored for the role and show your relevance for that role. You have to be very careful. If you put yourself too generic and then you tell your CV that this is what you are, you're a subject matter expert in this particular area, but you put a LinkedIn that says that you are well versed and you can do everything, then you need to be careful because the competition is high. So the hiring manager would select a candidate who's been potentially is a subject matter expert in all areas, in a particular relevant area, rather than So the aim is not to create confusion. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Okay. And one last question for you, Sylvia, before we move on then. So if a person has been in a company for 5, 10, 15 years, and in that time, they've obviously had multiple roles for that company, do they just put their one job title And let's talk about LinkedIn, because you know we're here, but it could be for your CV, resume, either. Do they put one job title, their latest one, or do they show that they've had 3 or 4 job titles and they've done different positions?
LinkedIn allows you to put your the way you moved up. So by all means, please do show that you moved up, whether it's sideways, you've been promoted, and that you've been great, the organization been utilizing your skills in multiple different areas. By all means, do put everything and the dates you've changed.
Okay. Right. So look, there are more questions. Keep them coming in. But Sylvia, let me get you to move on to your next slide, and then we'll cover more questions afterwards.
Okay. So I've named this slide "How to Nail a Phone and Video Interview," but also it kind of goes hand in hand with what our hiring managers are looking for. So what I want to cover is do's and don'ts for both phone and video interview. So you must make sure that you choose a quiet spot. The other key important thing is that actually I had a session one-to-one with someone the other day. What documents do you need to have? You must make sure you have a copy of the job description. You have the copy of the your CV. Talking points. Write down the key questions you want to ask. Write down important information about the company and your interviewer. The more you've done research, looking them up on Glassdoor, looking up the company website, looking the person on LinkedIn. And you must have your phone or computer if you're using a phone interview, or computer if you're using a video conference facility. And if you're using video conference facility, either way, you need to test your technology. Make sure that you're sitting in a place for reliable reception. If you're on a phone interview, test your video conferencing software, whether it's Zoom and Skype. Ask a friend to trial it with you. And you must make sure that you turn off all notification alerts or any sound on your phone and computer. It's quite annoying when someone's phone all of a sudden ringing and someone, you know, or you get a notification on your computer, quite distracting. And then the most important thing is learn to be comfortable with pauses and silence. When you stop talking about the subject, give your interviewer a chance to talk and think and chime in. Okay, these are do's and don'ts for both. If we move on into the phone interview, you must make sure that you smile, right? So if you're smiling, you create. If they don't see you, but they can hear that you're coming across as very engaging and very positive, very energetic. And make sure that you have a pen and paper. Sometimes people saying that, oh, it's a phone interview, I can just use my computer and laptop. It's very distracting if you're typing what you're doing. And the noise and keyboard is very distracting. Have a pen and paper, write down everything you need, and don't use your laptop. Video interview, get familiar with the tech and ask a friend or family to test, which I covered earlier. Choose the best space for your video interview. So make sure that the areas can be seen on the camera are clutter-free. It's so important. In terms of the best place, I mean, like, choose the right backdrop to make sure it's like at the wall or a nice picture frame. Posture, make sure you're not reclining whilst they're not there to see you face to face. You still have to have the same, represent yourself the way you would want to represent yourself when you were in face-to-face interview. Look at the camera more than the screen. It creates an eye contact situation, and eliminate all the distraction, as I said, and practice ahead of time and double check. So when we said practice ahead of time, double check, key important thing to make sure you do enough research, that you have everything, and then test your facilities technology that is working. I'll move to the next slide, Ellen, because it's all one. So during the interview, whilst you're at the interview, so obviously coming across confident, smiling, happy, positive, and having the right setup and doing the right preparation is all key for hiring manager already to create an impression about you within the next few seconds that you're connecting. When you answer questions, I would like you to take away this SAR. I'm sure many of you know, but as a method, situation, action, result. Make sure that you create a story rather than giving standard answers. So what you can do, you can prepare ahead of the time for the story. So think of different scenarios. Think of the list of common interview topics they'll be asking. So hiring managers normally want to know how you'll fit into the culture, how you'll be, do you know the job, do you understand about the company, and whether you ask the right questions. So you can actually understand what are the common interview topics they'll ask. So some of the questions are, what are your biggest strengths or weaknesses? So I've listed some questions for you there. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? How would your current boss describe you? What makes you stand out? What do you want to, why do you want to work here? Tell me about a time when. These are quite common. Tell me about a time. So if you can create answers to if you can think of a few scenarios, so rather than saying that what are your key strengths, rather than saying that, oh, I'm very, if you're project manager, you can say I'm very, very organized. It is just a standard answer. But if you're telling them what you've done as being organized, think of scenario where you saved the day through your organizational skills. So like scenario, I'm just making it up. So it might be that you were working in a project and you've saved the project and you were supposed to present, and all of a sudden someone lost the PowerPoint. But because you were so organized and you have backed it up, you saved the day. You have a copy of it. Just simple things like that, and they will show you how you work, and it represents the hiring manager, the style, and how organized you are, just around the organizational skills. Being knowledgeable about the job is quite important, because that's what you said, why you were suitable. That's what your summary section was saying, that this is why I feel like I'm suitable. So you have to tell the same story, why you know, what you know about the job, and what value you'll bring to the organization. Knowing about the organization culture and values, I already mentioned, so quite important you do this research in advance, and asking the right questions. Quite importantly, I had a scenario recently, 4 different executives been shortlisted. They all came out of the interview very strong. And we said we can only take 2 candidates through the assessment process. This was very, very difficult search we were running. To be honest, the hiring manager had a difficult situation. He was like, but I like them all. They're all great. How do I select? We selected at the end based on who asked the right question. So the competition is very high. Make sure that some people are like, oh, I don't have any other questions. We've already covered everything. Thank you so much. Oh, maybe, you know, when am I going to start? Ask relevant questions for the job, organization, their future, the strategy, the value you're going to add to the organization. So that actually can be a decision maker at the end. So these are the top tips. We can talk about a lot of stuff, but I will stop here.
Thank you. Thanks, Sylvia. So there are a number of questions that I think that's your presentation over. So I'll go through the text questions first, but then we can also open it up to a verbal discussion as well, okay? So before I open up the questions, so I guess you shouldn't ask as one of your questions, when will I get my pay rise? Or can you give me a pay increase, right? That you shouldn't ask those in the interview. But in all seriousness, so one of the questions that you'll see, there's quite a lot of text happening in the chat. Thanks, Mark and Gary, for the messages you've been putting there as well in replies to people. But one that I don't think has been addressed yet is nervousness in an interview. Okay, so we all feel it in different ways. What's your suggestion for if a candidate is nervous, whether it's a phone interview or face-to-face interview, how they can address that, how they can mask it if you want, so that the hiring manager doesn't see through it, so it doesn't stop them getting to the next stage? Any tips around nervousness?
I think in advance preparation is quite important. You will only be nervous if you haven't done your preparation. And so I would say just not attend the interview if you're nervous. You need to do your research well and be confident. Mark, you wanted to say something?
I would say exactly the same. So I think you as an individual know what makes you confident. And for me, as long as I know where I'm going, how to get there, I've given myself enough time, I've got the role, I've got the answers to my answers that I'm expecting to come up. And Sylvia gave some great tips there, which are similar to the ones I would have given, and the 3 or 4 key questions I want to ask at the interview. Then if I had those ready, had them to hand, then I would go into the interview confident. But yeah, for me, it would be all about getting that preparation right and doing the things that you know will make you give the best account of yourself and be confident.
Yeah. Okay, Gary, is there anything you'd like to add there? around
think
nervousness and how to overcome it?
Yeah, just to really add on to what Mark and Sylvia are both saying, you know, the amount of prep, there is such a thing as over preparing, but if you've over prepared, you're never going to get caught out. If you've under prepared, you're going to be metaphorically caught with your trousers down, and you're not going to give your best, you know. So if you do lots and lots, and I've been for roles where I've over prepared, and I had a list of about 25 things that I thought they were going to ask me. They asked me 3. So it's in your best interest. You owe it to yourself to do as much as you can to put yourself in a strong position so you're not nervous. Now, if you are naturally nervous, fair enough. But if you're nervous because you've not prepared, that's not really something you can, you can really take forward. But over prepare, if anything, because LinkedIn's got some great tools in there. And one of the courses is how to answer the most commonly asked questions, and it's things like, okay, so why should we employ you? And you're like, oh, hang on, I've never thought about that. But they give some good model answers, and they're really, really good on that piece. Yeah. So definitely over prepare.
Okay. And James has mentioned about having water. So either whether you're face-to-face or, you know, if it is a video conference, having water so you can sip that water and take a breather. But one thing I'd say, so, you know, I agree completely, but one thing I'd say about water or holding a pen or anything like that I've seen as a hiring manager is if a person is nervous, then they may be shaking the glass or the pen in their hand and fidgeting and whatnot. So if you are going to hold something or use it as a prop, fine. But as long as you're that kind of person that, as I said, is not showing your nerves in your body, I'd add. You also mentioned, Gary, about not being caught with your trousers down. Of course, one tip that's often said is imagine the person that's interviewing you with their trousers down, right? So in terms of bringing them lower down off that pedestal that you've maybe put them up on, speak to them like they're a friend, or yeah, you know, they're just someone who's equal to you rather than high up to kind of ease your nose. There's obviously many, many other tips, but that's some of them. Let me just see.
One thing I need to remember that no matter how senior the person that you're interviewing or how senior you are, everyone goes through that situation. Having interviewed many executives, trust me, there are so many executives at the CEO level, they could be so timid in the interview and nervous. This could be all because you haven't had a good sleep, you've been traveling between the jobs, you're not prepared, or you're losing your job, you're really desperate to get this job, you can come across timid and nervous. So make sure that you give yourself enough time.
Great. And look, there are more points in the chat, and as I said, there's a lot of text going backwards and forwards. So rather than me going through all of those now, you know, I may do at the end, but we have about 10 minutes left. Let's see if we can get some verbal dialogue going. So I'm going to try and unmute everyone. If you have lots of noise around you, then, you know, of course, please mute yourself individually. But let's see if we can get some verbal questions asked of Sylvia. So I've unmuted you all. You may have to do it manually perhaps, but you know, unmute yourself if you need to. But does anyone have a question that they would like to ask Sylvia directly?
Oh, Adamant.
Yeah, Avtar Singh here.
Hi.
First, thanks guys. Thanks for making this as a really wonderful session, I'll say. So thanks for arranging it. And question is, for example, I applied a couple of jobs through LinkedIn, but getting the response, it's very, I'll say tough, right? So what are the keywords or heading, like as you have explained? So I have all that, I have customized the URL, right? I got the recommendation. So all the necessary, the tips which you are giving, right? I did in my profile. But getting the actual responses is, which I'm finding is very hard, right? So it's not materializing. So where I'm lacking, just need some inputs.
Yeah. So if you're actually stuck and you think that you've done everything you needed to do, so perhaps you need to look at it from the recruiter perspective. Recruiter spends when they do the search. If I'm looking, as I will use the example of web designer. And I've done the search, Boolean search on LinkedIn. Try to do that yourself. Try to do for the job, the search, look for web designers and see whose profiles will come up. And you'll be able to see that some people's profiles with the headline stand out, exactly tells the story. And those are the ones they're going to click. They probably have thousands and thousands. So you need to first and foremost make sure that you pass the gatekeeper, which are the recruiters. So If they see you and they notice you, then you'll have the chance to be even talking and your CV being presented to the hiring manager. So that's what you need to. I think LinkedIn, Gary, you mentioned earlier that LinkedIn has a lot of tools, and there is also on LinkedIn Learning free how to be selected from LinkedIn the recruiters. Please do look at those videos.
You're absolutely right. LinkedIn has a whole plethora of learning tools about how to use the tool set. There's a couple that spring to mind. Number one is how to make a rock star profile, which, you know what, I've read it and it's good. Another one is entitled How to Get Recruiters to Come to You. And that's the thing that we have to remember, because recruiters, they're on LinkedIn all the time. They're looking for candidates. They're doing keyword searches. And so, as Sylvia says, if you can make yourself stand out, whether it's a really, really good descriptive headline or summary, then great, because it's only another version of your CV. So have a look at the courses. If you're on premium, they are free, but it is certainly worth a couple of hours of actually understanding how to use it, because no one's going to tell you this unless you go and find it out. And that's why things like that that we're doing here are designed to help. But it's a lot there on LinkedIn. So I would suggest go and have a look and see what you can find.
And I'll just make 2 points. Sylvia, if I may, just go on, Sylvia.
Okay.
No, go on. Go on.
I was just going to say, to make sure that you come up on the list for the recruiters, not only you put the keyword in your link and your headline, but make sure it's also in your summary and also in your work history. The more you are with creating density, the more on the top you're going to be.
Yeah, but I was just going to say 2 more things then, Sylvia, so that's good. One is, this is exactly why these 3 mentors on now are giving their time. So if you feel that you need more of their time, more coaching, more advice, more working with them, then if you aren't already a member of the Slack channel, but many of you are, please join the Slack channel and reach out to these 3 mentors and the other 27 to book one-to-one time with them, so you can go into more detail as to what's happening with your particular circumstances. So that's one point. The second is, and Sylvia was touching on this, and she mentioned Boolean search, how if a recruiter is searching, they'll see 1,000 profiles. I was just going to turn it around on its head and also mention to you, I think it's Avatar, right? And when you apply to the job or the recruiter, remember there's at least another 100 people, 200 people who've applied for that role, probably. The recruiter, unfortunately, of course, will only reply to 10. 190 will never get a reply, even if someone in that 190 is actually better than the 10 that they are approaching. But that 10 stood out. So again, I think you have to look at the tips that Sylvia gave and the other mentors mentioned. If you can, you may want to message them privately. So, if you've just applied generically through the job board in some way, then try and reach out to the recruiter. I know some like it, some don't, but obviously these are some of the tips. But let's move on from that to see if there are other questions that people have. So anyone else who wants to ask a question? Remember, unmute yourself if you need to. Anyone else?
Hi guys, Bernard here. I've actually not been feeling well for the past few days, so I'll keep this short. So I had an audio interview, a phone call interview on Friday, and I did my best in terms of preparing and everything. But during the interview, I noticed something. Anytime the interviewers ask the question, they put themselves on mute. So it sounds like you're not talking to anyone. So it's all quiet. And that can affect you mentally, if that makes sense. So I remember when the first question was asked, I felt like I was talking to space. I was talking to the air. So I had to take some time. I paused, relaxed, and imagined I was talking to people. So I prefer video interview to audio interview. I don't know if anyone can help me in terms of how to handle audio interviews, because for video interviews, at least you are talking to someone. You are able to relate to them. You can see facial expressions, whether they like what you are seeing, what you are saying, or what you are not saying. So yeah, it was a bit challenging. I'm still staying positive, hoping I get the job, but it was weird for the first couple of minutes for me.
Okay.
Yeah. not as unfortunate, but many of us are facing that. A lot of the organizations are running phone interviews and even relocating people just from one phone interview, even senior leadership, and they're making really, really expensive decisions. So I know it can be frustrating for yourself, and I think again, it can come across, you weren't prepared. It's a first of experience. Don't look at it negatively. I would say that if that was a distraction for you, you can only learn from that experience. But the interviews do mute because there's a panel, and you need to be already prepared that there is a panel. My voice can be recorded. Actually, with the new on-demand type of technology, I don't know if any of you have gone through those kind of interviews. Your interview, you're not talking to anyone, you're talking to a screen and it's recorded. You never even get face-to-face to say hello to the hiring manager. Hiring manager listens to it and accepts or rejects your application. So with the new tools and new technologies, this is the new phase of you not having direct with a hiring manager, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Bernard, I'd add a couple of things.
Yeah.
So an interviewer muting you when you're on a telephone interview is sometimes just common courtesy. I mean, I have a deep male voice. It carries a long way in an office. I've heard myself on other people's phone calls before now because my voice carries quite a way. So, you know, when people are in offices, sometimes just being on mute gives you a chance to hear the candidate clearly. But also, as Sylvia said, at the moment, many of the agencies and recruiters are working from home, and so they're having to adjust to, rather than seeing somebody face to face, doing it over the phone. It's as artificial for them as it is for you.
Okay.
I'd also add practice makes perfect, and so learn from that and think about the fact it may happen next time, and think about what you'd do differently is certainly a way forward.
Okay, thanks.
Bernard, I'll say one other thing which I don't think helps you, but it's just for you to be aware of. But you know, it doesn't necessarily make the situation better for you, but it's just for you to be aware of, so you don't take it personally. It could also be, of course, that the interviewer is interviewing you with one or two other people there, and that they want to discuss your previous answer or whatnot. Now, I know that's not nice. You know, they should just be completely focused on you, but they may want to mute themselves purely for the fact that they're listening to you, but they also want to discuss you. So it's just, you know, it's unfortunate, but that's technology and you just have to get used to it. And as has been said, just ignore the fact that there's no sound there, and answer the question. The main thing is focus on answering the question, right? And you can't go too far wrong.
It happened Friday, right? So there's less chances that they'll be in the same room and discussing you, but probably, like Mark said, they all have their lives and they have to get on. There's kids screaming. They've probably done a favor to you by muting themselves so there's no noise and distraction for you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess in the current climate, yeah. I was thinking more about, if they're together in office, but you're right. So, so other questions. Look, we're more or less out of time. So I'll stop the session in a couple of minutes, but anything else, any other questions that you have, anything that hasn't been touched on thus far? Okay.
I just, Alim, that of course we talked about LinkedIn provide lots of tools, but I'll add anything we're doing here is for free. So if you feel like you need additional support one-to-one, please join, and we'll be happy to look at your CV one-to-one session.
Yeah.
For LinkedIn.
Okay, great. So look, on that note, then let's end it. We're bang on time. Sylvia, thank you very much. I'm sure most of the people really benefited from that. Thank you, Gary and Mark, also for your contributions, and to everyone who's joined. Hopefully see some of you on the next sessions being run today. I think there's another 2 today, as well as sessions tomorrow and Thursday. There's also Sylvia's repeating this resume CV session tomorrow and on Thursday. So if you want to join those other sessions as well, and of course you're more than welcome to do so. Okay, so thank you all. Take care.